So earlier this morning, around 6 a.m., a user actually sent me a message on Twitter about a possible Nintendo 64 mini leak. And the thing about these type of leaks is, well, we already know, or at least have an idea of what the Nintendo 64 is going to look like when it comes out as a classic system. It's going to look like the Nintendo 64. But there were some other questions that a lot of us had. Would it have things like 4 controller ports? What do the controllers look like? Things like that. How small are you going to make it? Well, there were some images that appeared to have been leaked out. Like I said, G. Khan, who's on Twitter, sent a message over that had 3 pictures of an alleged N64 leak. And I looked over them. I've been looking over them throughout the day as I've had time. And I have to say, either this leak is real or someone had a lot of time and made renders that were down to the smallest details just for fun. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about because I, of course, have a Super Nintendo Mini, the controllers and everything. So I started kind of comparing the images to what I have. And yeah, they touched on details that I wouldn't even thought of if I wanted to make a leak like that. So we're going to go over all of that right now. Now, the origins of this leak come from Nacho and Pistachio over on Twitter, and I'm going to start showing you some of the renders here. Looking at this appears to be the idea of the system rendered out. I don't think the person was actually taking pictures of the alleged system if this is real. I think these are renders that were made on a computer for marketing purposes and things like that, or just an idea of what it's going to look like. Generally, you'll do this ahead of time for marketing when you put it up on a website and stuff. We see, of course, renders of different systems and controllers and stuff all the time online. But here is the first image, and right away I said, okay, yeah, that looks like it could have been a Nintendo 64 that is Photoshop, changed contrast, shadowing, and all that stuff. But then we start getting into the more interesting parts. This is an image here that shows apparently the front flap pulled down, which, yeah, that's how the Super Nintendo Classic works, so that makes sense. And we see 3 controller ports, and we assume there's a 4th one all the way on the right, and they're in a vertical position. Now, the first thing I noticed about this were those 2 pins on the inside of the ports in the exact same spot as it is on the Super Nintendo Classic. Those pins are in the exact same spots and the exact same formations as we would expect for these controller ports to be, and that was a very, very minute detail that I feel like if someone was making a rendering or trying to Photoshop this together might have forgotten about, and it would have just been all black. We wouldn't have seen any pins because the connectors pretty much have to be the same since they're still using that same port, which would make me wonder if a Super Nintendo controller would work on the Nintendo 64 for something like a Yoshi Store maybe, but that's a conversation for another day. Also, looking at the back of the one controller cable that we can see there with the input, we can actually see all kinds of markings on the back of that, and they pretty much line up exactly as mine is. Now, I did notice on the bottom of the system, which we're about to get to, is missing some stuff, and I think a lot of that has to do with the FCC regulations that wouldn't be imprinted on a rendering. But like the details on the side of that controller input are extremely detailed. I mean, they have all of the little wording, the symbols, everything on the back of that, even the correct tri-wing screws that are part of that, even up to the point where the end that's actually about to plug in is also correct. Again, this is a lot of small, fine details that seem to be exactly the same as we know them with the other systems. Then we can move over to the next image that appears to show it from the bottom, if it's like upside down, taking a picture of it. And they have the mod at the top, CLV-401. That's an odd model number because the model number for the Super Nintendo Classic is CLV-201. So it's almost like they skipped 301. I'm not really sure what that's about, but maybe Nintendo would know at that point if they have a 301 for something else at some point. This is what I'm talking about for the FCC regulation. They are missing that, at least on the bottom here, if they want to put it in the same exact spot. Again, though, they wouldn't have this same FCC regulation, I guess, overseas or in other markets, so that, I guess, makes sense. Otherwise, though, they even have a strip there to where the serial number would be stuck as a sticker, and everything else looks about right. Like this, again, a lot of small details, even down to the 5 volt at the top there. That's all correct, like exactly. Now listen, it's not a secret that there is probably Nintendo 64 Classic coming. And if this is all correct, if this is all out of marketing or somehow internal Nintendo, my problem when I look at these is it's like someone's taking a picture with a cell phone on a computer screen, and whenever I see that, I go, yeah, sure. At least they weren't doing that thing where they try to make it blurry by moving it around really fast, like somebody's walked in the room and they got caught. The thing about this is if they are at this stage of the marketing and rendering and everything, the N64 Classic could actually be announced soon-ish from what we're seeing here. This isn't like something that is done and is being announced next year. This is something that could be happening soonish. And the thing about Nintendo is they don't need this to be announced in a direct. If you remember, the Super Nintendo Classic was just kind of thrown out there online one day, and they were like, Star Fox 2, that's happening, and a website went live. If this is all correct, this is something that could just be announced out of nowhere. They can just say, hey, N64 Classic, this holiday. Do I think we're too close to the holiday for them to announce it and launch this holiday? Not necessarily. What most of us need, like, because this is probably going to be like $90, we assume, right? They're probably going to try to make it a little cheaper than the PlayStation Classic, but a lot of us don't need a ton of time. A month, maybe, at that, because most of us already know this is happening. So we're probably going to go to the store and buy it anyway. Let's be real, especially if it's not like a $400 or $100 system like a PlayStation or an Xbox or something. This is closer to that buy that you go into the store and you just make, out of nowhere. You're just like, oh yeah, I'll take that. So it's going to be interesting to see if this happens. And I also want to point out that this doesn't necessarily need to launch around a holiday season, right? This could launch. It could launch, in April or something. It doesn't necessarily have to be happening this December. It could be happening next year. But I have to say, this looks very, very convincing. I'm not ready to say it's absolute, as I can't necessarily find the source for these pictures outside of that person that was posting them on Twitter. So if you have more information about this, feel free to message me on Twitter about all of this, because I'm curious, at the end of the day, if this is real or if this is somebody just having some fun online. If they are very good at photoshopping and rendering this stuff. Very good down to all the little details, but we'll see. We'll see what happens here. I mean, we could see the Nintendo 64 Classic getting announced soon-ish. It has to be soon, right? We're getting close to the holidays, so I'll keep you guys up to date, and we'll keep an eye out for this. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. Do you think this is real, or do you think this is somebody just messing with us or trying to mess with us? I'm curious what you think. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.